Firstly, thanks very much. Secondly, I'm actually not going to speak a lot about tech today. And the reason is I'm getting a little bit bored of tech. Not because it's not interesting and exciting, but just because I've been speaking on it now for 6 years. And I really need a new presentation. So what you're going to be subjected to at the moment is a new presentation in an entirely different field of tech. I said at the beginning of when we introed each other, we did our 1 minute, I said that my passion is unlocking potential in people. And I've got this grudge against a fair amount of small business owners and a fair amount of medium business owners, and particularly I see this a lot in Durban. And my grudge is that we're subsistence farmers instead of commercial farmers. We worry about where we're going to take our kids with the profit that we make from our business on holiday, instead of worrying about the future of this country, instead of worrying about employing people, instead of worrying about their potential, what they can do in this world. We don't invest in the people in our business, we invest in our families. And I know that because I've sat in front of people and I've said, well, if you give me 30,000 Rand a month, which I know you have, I can triple the size of your business over the next 3 years, and someone goes, you know what, I'm going to the Seychelles at the end of the year, so no thanks. And that irritates me, and that's kind of the start of a lot of what this conversation is. So I'm about 14,500 words into this book. My deadline is the middle of September. I'm flying to Morocco for a conference, and I've said to myself I have to have it finished by then, which means that I'm working most of my weekends and trying to find intelligent things to say. My book is called The 5-Year Mark. It's a reflective journey in the last 5 years of my entrepreneurial journey, building a relatively small business with a relatively big vision. Our aim in this company was never to just kind of churn out social media content. Our aim was always to be a company that was based in Durban that had an international footprint. We wanted to make sure we were a business that contributed back into the industry which we were born. We also wanted to make sure that we were one of the best places in the world to work at. We wanted to make sure that people thought more about how great it would be to work at our company than how great it would be to work at a tech company. Because again, I've had these frustrations in the past where people have just been walked over, and I've watched it take place. And so we set out to build this kind of business. And I wish I could say that I had this dream and this great idea that I was going to start a digital agency as it erupted in South Africa. I wish I could say that I was watching all the global trends and I saw it coming and I was like, now's the right time, let's jump in. The truth is I got retrenched and did the only thing I knew how to do, which was use Facebook. And somehow someone thought there was value in that. And so I thought, well, if you're willing to pay for it, I wonder how much you're willing to pay for it. And I pushed that as far as I could. And I got a couple of people and they started paying me a salary, and this felt good. And then I was working 22-hour days and for 6 days a week. And I thought, if I hire someone, I can have my evenings back and remind myself what my wife looks like. And so we did that. And then after hiring that particular person, whose first day was in a coffee shop with me apologizing to her because our office lease hadn't even started yet. So I had nowhere for her to work. So I said, so here's some work. If you could just go away for 3 days and do it, and then we could reconvene when I get the keys to the office so we actually have a place to work. And then the internet was an interesting thing after that, because it's really difficult, if you want to know, to run a digital agency when you don't have the internet. So that was challenge 1 in our first year. Challenge 2 in our third year was when we moved into our bigger offices with 15 staff who had no internet for 3 months while we tried to keep a digital agency alive. So that was fun. But what I wanted to do, and what was the intention of this, was to look back and say, what have we learned and how do we share this? Because if I share this, I hope that other people will grow from it. Because I hope that if no one gets up there and says, I believe business can be better than it is, and shares how they think they've got it, No one's going to correct them, no one's going to learn, no one's going to do it. So here are a whole bunch of really probably terrible ideas that you can critique to death and come up with better ones to run a business. So that's the 5-year mark, and that's what that's what I'm trying to do at the moment. This is my, hopefully, presentation for next year. I understand from the conversations that there are a couple of unanswered questions that will come once I finish this presentation. A couple of questions around what is tech and social media and how do you market yourself, etc. I'm happy to handle all of those in questions. I'm happy to handle any other question that you have, as long as it's not too personal and private in questions. So please just jot them down if they haven't been answered. But here are a couple of stories around our business. The first is that I found that people need a challenge. I think in business we spend too much time trying to couch people into a position where they cannot fail. Therefore, we don't challenge them and create the possibility that they might. And I think that that's the first problem. I was 18 years old when I learned this lesson. There was an older gentleman of about 55, 60 years old who ran a campsite for school kids in the summer holidays in December. And I had been going to these camps since I was 11 years old, and every December I got chucked in a bus and I got sent out for a week. I was clearly not a pleasant child to be around. And I made my way down to up into Underberg, and we spent a week on this holiday camp that they planned. And the same guy who is talking to me now when I was 18, he was one of the guys who ran it then. So he's watched me grow up. And when I went into high school, I used to help on these camps, and then I spent a year traveling-ish overseas and spent some time at camps. And so when I came back, he said to me, I would like you to run 3 weeks worth of camps for kids. Okay, but you've got to understand the weight of this. Each camp has about 60 kids. Other people's precious children. And I'm an 18-year-old snot who thinks he knows everything, that thinks it's a great idea to send 60 unequipped children on 8 tubes down a rapid, because it will be fun. You know? And so we started, so this happened, and this guy says to me, I'd like you to run these camps for 3 weeks. I believe you can do it. I had to market it. I had to get 60 kids every week into this campsite. I had to put the whole thing together. We did all the, I used to go to schools and do these presentations to school kids, which I thought was hilarious in itself. I had to find my own team on a zero budget, fully volunteer, who would love to spend their Christmas holiday looking after children, which was an amazing feat in itself. And I had to work out what we were going to do every day, what programs we were going to run, how we were going to put it together, and then put that together. And I had to hit repeat 3 weeks in a row for the same team and keep them inspired throughout that whole thing. 18 years old, some 50-year-old guy says, you're the right guy. No, he said that. I'm pretty sure he had a whole team going, when he drops it, we're ready to take over. You know? If no one had stepped into my world at that point and put a big enough challenge that I thought, for some stupid reason, I thought I could maybe get this thing right, I would never have been able to do that. 3-4 years after that, someone arrives I ended up doing sound and lighting for a Christian music festival on New Year's Eve. I end up in these very strange, weird environments. So I ended up doing this, and I'm standing there and I'm doing these things, and there's this guy walks up to me, and he's the guy running the festival, and he says, so could you do this next year? What I didn't realize he was actually asking is, could you do this for the next 7 New Years of your life? But he said, could you do this next year for us? So I was like, yeah, sure, I can do it. What I didn't realize is that means finding a sound system without any money, finding a lighting rig without any money, and doing all of that. And then I realized at that point, because I was studying marketing, that I had this thing that I could do. And so I somehow stupidly volunteered to build the brand for a Christian music festival that started to bring 3,000 people every year for an alternative New Year's. Instead of getting drunk on the sides of streets, we brought them into Ashburton in Maritzburg, and they could listen to relatively decent music. And so we did that. And again, if someone hadn't said, hey, there's a young 22-year-old who knows nothing, let me give him a challenge to do something he's never thought of doing before, that wouldn't have happened. And so my kind of teens and childhood are littered with all of these stories where someone saw something in me that I didn't see, and they trusted me to step into something. And then I kind of started to realize that if you're not taking on any chances in this world, I don't know the rest of this quote, you're not really planning any growth in your future. So I started to put myself into places and put a challenge on myself. One of them this year was to actually try and lose weight. I'm not doing very well, but I'm trying to not grow in that area. So this became kind of like a personal thing for me, was if I wasn't in a place where I was challenged, I wasn't growing, and I got addicted to this idea of growing as an individual. And then I started to realize that that's not really the point, because the point is this kind of quote which says how do you know if you're not, how tall you are and how capable you are if you're not in over your head. And I started to realize when you're in over your head, you need other people to help you bring this thing together. And that's what happened when I was in DigitLab. And then I started to realize this, that it's my role as a leader in the team, and the guy heading the team up, it's my role to make sure that the team themselves are challenged enough to see how tall they are. And then I had to shift my focus, not from how tall I am or how big I am, but I had to shift my focus to how big the person standing in front of me is and how much of their potential is unlocked. And I learned that through people need a challenge. So when we started DigitLab, 1 year in, through the weirdest set of circumstances, I'm standing at a conference venue in Cape Town, and someone is saying to me, the event's not actually happening. They didn't pay. You're at an event that is a hoax. It was a big CEO event, and I was like, okay, but I'm speaking at this hoax event. Do you think I'm going to get paid for it? So I ended up in Cape Town for that own reason. I was then getting on a plane to come back. I was there on a hoax. But because I was there, I had a conversation with a guy in the Cape Town office at KPMG, and he said, we're thinking about this thing called social media, could you help us? And on the flight back, I wrote a 2-hour proposal, which 7 months later got accepted. We landed our first international client out of France, running social media for KPMG. Now, were we capable? I think my biggest client below KPMG sold plastic cards in Pinetown to a very small amount of people. And so we were not capable. When I walked back to the team and said, we're now doing marketing on a global scale for KPMG, they were like, sorry, huh? We hired 5 people. One of them was a very good friend of mine, and we somehow worked our way through this. And so we started to build this analogy of we punching above our weight. People used to walk into our offices and go, we thought you were bigger. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm sorry about that. People think we're bigger because we do really cool stuff. And it's because we've constantly just said, we need a challenge. What's the next challenge? Just because we haven't done this before doesn't mean we can't do it. Let's build a team of people who kind of are searching to work out how tall they are. So that was the first lesson I learned, was people need a challenge. So when you do that, this is what ends up happening. Good people become great people, which is really, really cool. But then people start leaving. Which pissed me off a lot, because what ended up happening was that I would find someone with potential, and I'd let them realize that they've got all this potential, and they would realize that my little piddly business of 12 people wasn't going to release the potential that they had in them, and so they would leave and go and find a place that would. And so some went out and started their own businesses, some went out and did different things, and the cool thing is that we've been tracking a lot of those that we want back, and some of them are already starting to come back. And so that's pretty cool, because now we're like big enough again. We somehow managed to get big enough, and we're like, so we're a little bit bigger, we've got an extra 5 employees, could you come back? It would be great if we could. And so what we're finding is that what I had to work out was if I wanted to keep these really great people, I needed to make sure that I was growing fast enough to keep up with them, which shifted the pace for me completely. Suddenly I had to learn to dream bigger, to think bigger, to put stuff together, to make it faster, to put enough pressure to do, because if I didn't, I would lose these great people who had somehow found a way to be unlocked. And so I had to get used to the idea that I was going to lose some people because they had so much potential, and I had to come to become okay with that. With the fact that DigitLab was just a part of their journey for them to become really great in the future, then it's our privilege to be a part of that journey. And then this was super interesting for me. Passion became tangible in our business. I don't know if, like people say, yeah, it's a passionate business, but when you can feel it, you kind of feel like you're wading through it. Sitting in a room with someone who's really passionate, and you kind of feel like There's a heat and there's a weight of what's happening in the room. And when people walk in and say, so I'll give you an example. One of our staff at the moment is fighting with me because he wants to work the overtime to do the really cool project that we've got on the table that we want to outsource because we don't want to kill our team. But if he wants to work on it because he believes he can grow through it and he can do it better than anyone else. So I'm fighting for people to not do the really cool stuff that they want to do in life just so that I can protect them from having a nervous breakdown. And that's that type of passion that we're starting to feel, and we're starting to see all of these weird side effects coming from. And we just do a hell of a lot more than most people who are just a small 28-man agency. When we get asked to pitch into marketing environments, we get asked to pitch against some of the biggest agencies in South Africa. We recently pitched for one of the biggest brand accounts in South Africa, in the world actually. And for the South African component, we were the only Durban agency. We were the joke. We were the like, let's throw them in and see how they do. And we won 2-3 months later. And we won because our team just know now how to unlock that potential that sits within them, and they know how to just get more done. So as a team, we just outputting so much stuff that people go, you must be bigger, you must be better than you actually are. And we're better than people think we are, but we're not bigger. We're just passionate about unlocking, finding out what the next thing is that we can do, and we're trying to build that in people. So people need a challenge in their lives. We should be less afraid to put something difficult in front of someone's world. I feel sorry for my son, because I'm going to spend the rest of my life looking for something else that he hasn't done yet that he's going to have to step up to. And sort of at the age of 4, I don't think he quite knows what he's in for the rest of his life. So here's one of my other lessons that I've been learning is clarity is king. And I mean this in the sense that there needs to be clarity in what you want to do. There needs to be clarity in what you want the people to do in your business, and there needs to be clarity in what you do. So my first lesson around this that people shared with me was this. Do what only you can do. And this floored me because I'm the CEO, in a small business that means you're the chief everything officer. So what only you can do is everything that needs to be done. And it started to change my thinking because someone was like, if you focus on what only you can do and you do that well, you will attract the people who fill in the gaps and you will build a business together. And I thought, well, that sounds really high and mighty and like a really cool idea, but I thought I'd give it a shot. And so, but I didn't know what it was that only I could do until I started to speak to people I was in business with, and they said, well, Mike, you're the one that motivates the team. Only you can do that. We can do everything else, which was shocking because I was the digital expert and they were telling me no one came back to me and said, only you can design the best strategies for our clients. No one said that. They were all like, just give us that. Nice try, just give us that bit again. We'll do this. This is what we do. And so they said you can motivate people. One of the other comments that came back is you're the catalyst. You can add energy where in the business because of your role and your personality where there isn't energy and where we need energy. And the other thing someone said is there's a feeling that happens in the office when you're away for extended periods of time. It kind of just drops. So we need you in the office just to keep that energy lifted, which changed all my travel plans. I try to stay, if I'm away from the office, I try not to do it for more than a week at a time. Because if I do, apparently, things just dip a little bit. So that's the feedback that I got. So I went, okay, well, all I'm going to do is motivate people to do stuff that I'm not going to do. It's all delegation. And so I've started to focus on motivating people more than I ever have, which has been tough because motivating people means getting their buy-in, and I don't like getting people's buy-in. I like telling people what to do, and that's got nothing to do with buy-in. So I had to change the way in which I approached things. And so this whole idea of clarity suddenly switched gears in my head, and I suddenly went, if that's the stuff only I can do, what does that actually mean for our business? What does that mean for us? And then it started to say, well, then I need an ops person because clearly other people can do operations better than I can. Clearly I need digital strategists because they can do that job better than I can. And so I started to become very honest with myself about what that team looked like around me. And so now I get stressed when they start to leave because I've been searching for that little unique fit into who we are as a business. And so this thing for clarity for me was so important. So when we first started our business, I told you about that first employee that I brought in so I could have my evenings back. This was our simple thing because it was a case of we now, from doing everything, we can do half of everything. So how do you write a job description that says, here's half of everything? So we wrote a job description that looked like this. I will go out and make sure we bring in new business and new clients. You make sure we don't lose it. And then we had an accounts person on the side who said, if you could just make sure the money comes in, that would be fantastic. And so that was our deal, and it worked for 3 years. For 3 years, without any other job description on the face of the planet, it was, you make sure we don't lose these clients, I'm going to make sure we go and get them. And that was it, that was our deal. We hardly spoke about it again for years, until it became a point that we needed to actually start to fine-tune and bring in specialized skill sets around it. So clarity becomes king, even if clarity is the broadest thing, as long as you know where your will ends and where your will begins. It helps you understand your role and where you're going to add value in that business. So the next thing we learned was you've got to start giving back to your industry. So I'm on a plane to Singapore, and you get these very astute businessmen who work on planes. Like you see that, like they're talking away, and then you bump into them like in the airport, and they're like, I've just had 36 hours on a plane, and I've just like rewritten our entire strategy for next year. I'm the guy who sits and catches up on all the movies and every musical thing that I haven't yet seen, because that's what 36 hours is for, while you lie awake trying to work out how you're going to think straight when you're presenting in 6 hours. And so I'm that guy. I just consume anything. So that's why I fly with Emirates, because they've got the best TV. That's the only reason. If they change their TV supplier, I'm out. And I'm willing to put up with all the stopovers that I have to deal with. I'm watching this Wembley live tour of Ed Sheeran. And Ed Sheeran is just an acoustic guitarist who writes a whole pile of really good songs. And his show is insane. 60 to 80,000 people singing all of his songs, and he's standing on a stage with his acoustic guitar and his voice. And I'm like, this guy is living the life I should have had. This is what I wanted. I wanted to be a rock star. This guy is doing what I wanted to do in life. And so I'm standing in awe at this whole thing, and he does something really interesting, which isn't new, but it was just really interesting. He starts to bring on who he mentions as a mentor of his, and he brings them on, and Sir Elton John comes on, and they sing one of Sir Elton John's songs, not his own, one of Elton John's songs. And they do a collaboration. The rest of the concert is just a combination of collaborations with Ed Sheeran and other people. Chris Botti, does anyone know who Chris Botti is? Chris Botti is the trumpet player for Sting's band. He is Sting's trumpeter. Like, if they're going to play a trumpet, it's Chris. He's the guy who's going to do it. He goes and puts a solo act together, and the entire solo act is him in collaboration with everyone from the lead singer of Aerosmith to Sting, to some of the biggest jazz artists you've ever heard, to a violinist, a classical violinist in Japan, because that's where all classical violinists come from. So he puts this whole show on with all of these really famous people, and he catapults himself into fame, because he's the solo guy that no one knew him as Chris Botti, the guy who Sting's band. You know, you met Chris, like people were like, who's Chris? But after that, he catapulted himself in space. And when he did it in Boston, of all places, we just recorded it and stuck it out there for people to do. So collaboration is something that we miss in business. We say we need to collaborate, but we actually don't mean it. Because if we're going to collaborate properly, that means when we do something together, you're getting as much out of it as I'm getting. And we don't do that. We go, let's collaborate, but if you could, I'm just going to make sure the client sees me, and can we build this way so that I can pay you, because it's a power struggle, and and we don't want you in front of it because I'm scared that you're going to do something really fantastic, and they're going to go, oh my gosh, you're amazing, and leave me. So if I just focus on what I do well, and I find people who are out there that are doing other great things, when we collaborate together, magic starts to happen in the industry, and people get better services at the end of the day. We're too scared to let this happen. We're too scared to let this put together. And the reason is because we're not as good as we think we are. And we need to focus back on just being very, very good at what we do. And then we can kind of then be a little bit, we can have that. If we're good at what we do, we kind of, maybe not a 7-ton elephant, but maybe like a half-ton truck standing behind us of confidence, and we can actually start to engage in this. And this was a big challenge for us. We started to, I don't think I have another slide. Sorry, it's a very rough, yeah. So this is where I was going. I promise, I'm sticking to that story. So the thing that we did is we said we wanted to create an event in Durban that brought people together around this idea of digital. So the thing that's always been important to us and what kind of makes us tick is this relationship between technology and people. So if you ever said like, well, where do you fit? We're right in the middle. We're the gap. We're that point at like, as you touch your iPhone, that was us. You know, that's where we want to be the whole time. And we're fascinated with those couple of centimeters. And so everything we do is about that. So we said, well, we could continue to try and do this, 20-odd people sitting in an office and try and make world impact. Or we could create an event that found other people like this who went out and did this in their own world. And so we did. We created an event called Digital Swarm, which we've only been running in Durban. And the craziest things have been happening. The idea was if we could unlock thought inside the digital industry, we could get people passionate about what we do, and we could kind of, in essence, give our vision legs. So our vision only had 20 people times, that's 40, good maths, 40 legs at the time, you know, to get out there and do the thing. 40 legs isn't going to get you very far. But if you can fill a room with, instead of 20 people in your employee base, if you can fill a room with 100 people, you get 200 legs. If you put that online and 1,000 people, you get 2,000 legs that can get that message out. So your vision becomes bigger than who you are. And that, I think, is more powerful than anything else. And very often, when you put yourself in there, when you're the one doing the collaboration, you come across as the guy that's putting the industry together. You're the one who builds the trust in everybody. You're the one who gets all of the credit that comes out of doing something good for the industry. So when people say, have you met Mike? He's a good guy. Never met him, but he runs this thing called Digital Swarm. I've seen him do this, that, and the other. Like, there's some cool stuff that's going on. People have a perception of me and they've never met me. I've had people phone me. How's this? Someone phoned me and said, I've read your podcasts, I've listened to I've read your blogs, listened to your podcasts. How much do you charge and are you available on the 18th of Feb? Because they had an impression that I was amazing. I was like, okay, we need to sit down, you need to lower your expectation or else you're going to be blown away disappointed by the time I finish. But when we get out there and do stuff, and we get out there and collaborate with people, our vision gets legs, and it always somehow finds its way back to those who created it. And so this idea of giving back to the industry, if we can think bigger than us in our subsistence farming kind of culture of, well, how much money can I extract out of this business? We can move into a space of I have a vision that I want to give legs. The industry is how you do that. So then there's this, and this was a difficult lesson for me to learn. I'm going to share two tough stories with you that I've debated about whether I should put out there because you're going to hate me and you're going to think that I'm terrible. And I don't do well with that kind of feedback. But the idea is this, is that I think, especially young businesses, especially businesses that want to make a big impact in this world, they need to chart their own course. What we do is we fall into this nature of best practice. Yeah. So the whole part of academics sat down and did best practice. You know what best practice helps you do? Blend in with everybody else. Which means that you're not standing out. Which means that you're not making a difference. Which means you're part of the problem instead of part of the solution. So I'm reading a book on positioning at the moment. The only thing the guy basically says is find the one thing you care about and just do that. And make sure it doesn't even matter if people hate you for it. If you position yourself with one thing, then that's the thing that people are going to know you for. And when they need that, they're going to come to you for it. The biggest ad agency in America, one of the biggest ad agencies in America, focuses on just being a retail ad agency. And they don't even go to pitch. The people just come and say, please take my business. You know, we'd like to give you millions. Could you take us on? You know, do you have capacity? And that's the kind of conversation I think we all wish we were in, but we don't chart our own course because we're too scared sometimes. We walk into something, we don't put our thought process to it. A friend of mine who lives in Cape Town, his name is Theron, and he wrote a book called Reefing, which is a philosophical Christian book about the idea that as Christians, and I think most religions do this, we adopt our thinking based on what everybody's told us instead of actually thinking about why we believe what it is. Now you would think that an atheist might say that to a Christian because they want you to stop believing it. But actually if you really want to believe it, you've got to deconstruct something and reconstruct it back. Because in that reconstruction process you start to realize why you believe it. And so when people come back to and challenge you, oh you should do it this way, you actually have a reason not to. because you've chosen to do it this other way. And this is what I think we don't do enough in business, is we rely on consultants who've done this 100 times in about 18 different accounting firms, and we go, oh, well, those accounting firms are successful, that must work for us in our ad agency. So one of them is this. Annual performance reviews. First 2 years of our business, we never ran a single performance review, and people were flocking in our doors to try and get into our business. I think it's because they knew they could get away with anything. But the thing is that we then started to get a little bigger, and we moved from 12 to 15 to 20 people, and we were doing a lot of growth. Our first 3 years, we more than doubled in size every year. So we were just flapping. I used to tell people I'm on the back of a truck that's going really fast, just trying to hang on. I don't actually know what the heck I'm doing. But the biggest degree I actually know what I'm talking about was a degree in how to handle a sound desk, not how to be able to handle a business. So I had no idea what was actually going on. So we sat down and I sat down with some really smart guys and they said, you need performance reviews, because if you can do performance reviews, you can lock everyone down to KPIs. They get on with their job every year. They do everything that they need to do. Then you get back at the end of the year, you make sure it's done, you adjust salaries and And so I thought, smart idea, we put a lot of work into it, we put it into play. Didn't quite understand. That was the only year we were not profitable.
Sure.
We lost 400,000 Rand that year on a business that they can't afford to lose 400,000 Rand. I've only since now been at a point where that's no longer a problem in our lives, because we've had to climb back out of that. So what we then did is we then sat down and said, let's deconstruct what we're trying to get people to do. We're trying to unlock potential in people. We want people to come up with the ideas that grow the business and let them do the jobs, and let's equip them to do that work. And we built a mentoring program, which we're now refining because we're starting to realize that not everyone can mentor well, not everybody's a coach. But we put everyone in the position that you are mentoring your team. You have to get the best out of your team, and you're going to do that every week or every 2 weeks. Or we put these time frames on people. We had a little basic reporting structure where people come back to me and tell me what they're eking out of their team and how they're dealing with all the problems that are coming through. Over the last couple of years, we've been making profit. We've had some of the toughest years. We've dealt with the same challenges we dealt with in year 3. We just have a more committed team, because we're working with them every day instead of reporting back every year. So we dropped KPIs, and I will never in my life do an annual performance review again, because they are the most painful things and they bring the worst out of me. So I don't even want to know what it must be like on the other side of the table. The other thing is awards. We fought against awards for the first 4 years. I think I even got close to writing national statements about how much I hate awards and the process, mainly because they're cliquey, and you generally only win an award if you're kind of like one of those key people and you're famous, or there's something there. But what we started to realize in year 4 and 5 for us is that we wanted to set a bar of excellence, but we no longer knew what that bar was. But the industry did, because they were rewarding people for great work. And so how do you measure creativity? How do you measure strategy? They're these fluid things that aren't easy to measure. So you put it in front of your peers, and they tell you that you're terrible, and you go back and cry and start over again, and you keep pushing and pushing and pushing to a level that hasn't been set by you, but it's been set by the industry. So we went back into awards, not because we still believe that it's flawed in a sense that it's very cliquey and it's really just a process that people kind of get into and it's a bit of a game you play. But the reason that we're doing awards is because we want to up the level of excellence inside our business. And the minute that the awards process no longer does that for us, we'll drop it. And the reason is because we're charting our own course. We don't care about what best practice is. Best practice will make us the same as everybody else who's struggling to make a living. Our own practice and the reason and backing our own practice is what's going to help us stand out. I hope. So we'll see. We'll see what the 10-year mark looks like. I might not have a business. And then here's the last one for you. Have the tough conversations. I'm not a person who likes it when you don't like me. I want to deal with that. But I don't want to deal with that in the sense that I want to sit down and have a tough conversation with you. I just want you to like me. So I'm not a fan of conflict. Most of my life, I've never sought out to deal with conflict. Okay, but in this landscape, in business, I've realized you cannot do anything without becoming a professional at dealing with conflict. The funny thing for me is when you told me what your whole plan is with this conflict and dealing with conflict in people's worlds. All that's going through my head is I've got like 18 people in my office you need to speak to. And the reason is not because they're not good at what they do, they just hide from conflict. And because they hide from conflict, we're not building the team. So I came across this thought as the team's only really as strong as its weakest link, and I think that when we don't deal with the stuff that's in front of us, we're weakening that link. There's a fantastic book called Critical Conversations or Crucial Conversations. I'm terrible at names, I'm even worse at book names. But what was fascinating about what they were bringing to the table, and what really cemented this in my mind, was this. People don't draw closer because they have no problems. They draw closer because they've worked through them. Now take that phrase and think about your best friend. The stuff that draws you close is the stuff you've walked through together. Marriages break because they don't know how to deal with those problems and they decide to go their separate ways. Marriages succeed because they find a way to deal with that conflict together and they work through it. On the other end of that, you've got a rock-solid marriage that starts to take place. You can't expect to grow closer as an organization. You can't expect to grow stronger as a team if you're not going to find ways to deal with the conflict. I'm not saying we should rush in and start fighting with everybody. And pick your battles and be smart about it and make sure that your purpose behind all your conflict is to draw yourself together instead of rip yourself apart. But if you do that in business, you'll find you get really great partnerships. One of the things that we learned very quickly in the ad agency world is that you can never keep a client happy all the time. But it's how you handle the situation that depends on whether or not that client will stay with you for the rest of your life. And so we've come to terms with the fact that every now and then we fail, but it's how we deal with the conflict in that failure that helps us become a stronger team. And so those are my lessons. That's halfway through a book that I'm trying to put together. I'm hoping to finish it soon. I've got about 25 chapters to go and about 14 days to write them, so we'll see how that goes. The things that I'm trying to get across here is that I think if we go into business with purpose and vision, it shifts the playing field. And it means that we're stepping up to something that's more important to ourselves. And that's what inspires us to have the tough conversations. That's what inspires us to chart our own territory. That's what inspires us to get the clarity and find out what it is that we actually want to solve and fix. When we start to get all that stuff together, we find a way to be about more than just us. And I think when we get to that point, we can move from being a subsistence farming culture to being a commercial farming culture that has the ability to feed and look after way more people in this world. And it locks back down to kind of one of the core injustices that I feel and that is taking place in our world, and that is the fact that there's too much poverty in our world. And I think entrepreneurship is a way to solve that. But I think we've got to change the way we think to an idea of this isn't about how much I can extract from this world, but it's about how much I can put back.
Yeah.
And so that's the gist of the 5-year mark. That's why I'm putting my ideas on paper and I'm going to put them in front of the world and be ridiculed for it. But I hope that someone one day will be inspired to at least start their own thing and do it differently. One of the biggest lessons I learned was how not to do business from someone. And that actually inspired me to go and do my own one. So if people look at this and go, oh, I'll never do that, he doesn't know what he's talking about, but start a business, then the job is done. So, yeah, thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much, Mike. I'm so glad that we connected with Mike on Twitter today. So we follow one of the top 20 in Durban.
That's a very old stat.
As well.
It's a very old stat.
Is it one of the top 5 at the moment?
No, I think at least in the top 10,000. But yeah, no, it's a very old stat. There were very few people on Twitter.
Mike, you have a very interesting style, one of humility, so we really appreciate your time that you've taken to come and chat to us today. I love when we collaborate, magic happens, and I think we're in the process at PSASA of making that really a part of what we believe in here. And then, just very last of all, I think what I love most about you is you don't set off on the chartered course. You kind of go out there and make your own thing happen. And I think a lot of us need to also learn that, because sometimes what works for somebody else just does not work for us. And the more we try it, the worse it actually gets, and the less confidence we have, and then we just kind of give it up. So I really learned quite a lot this evening, so thank you for being with us, and as a token of our appreciation.